Welcome to the last section of your drawing boot camp for perspective. So the last thing I'm going to show you is how to draw a city using 2-point perspective. So if you take a look at this finished example, you're going to notice you have a vanishing point right here and a vanishing point right here. So looking at this drawing, what you're going to notice is the tops of the buildings going this way are going to meet this vanishing point. And same with the bottoms of the buildings. They're all lined up towards this vanishing point on the left side. Now if you look at the right hand side, you'll notice these tops of the buildings are going to the right vanishing point, and same with the bottom. Okay? And the windows are also doing that as well. So what you're looking at is kind of the corner of a street, and you can see down both ways, okay, right and left. So that's what we're going to work towards, and you'll notice there's some similarities between drawing this and drawing the interior space that we did. So the first thing we're going to do is draw a very light horizon line. Now 2-point perspective is a little bit different than 1-point when it comes to the use of the horizon line. So for the sake of this, I'm going to draw fairly lightly, so hopefully you can see this okay. But we are going to do some erasing, so I don't want to make it too dark. But I do have a horizon line going across my paper. Now on either side, I'm going to put a vanishing point. If you'd like to label them, you certainly can if that's been helpful for you. For example, I might call this VP1 and VP2. Again, you don't have to label, but sometimes that can just be helpful. So I'm going to show you this one that isn't as far along as the first one I showed you. But what we're going to work towards is adding a sidewalk in, which can eventually look more like this. We can add some shading and some detail and that sort of thing later. And then we're going to work on adding some buildings. I'll show you how to put some windows in, and then we'll go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add in a sidewalk. So to add in a sidewalk, what we're going to do is we're going to line up our ruler with our vanishing point 1, or our left vanishing point. And then I'm going to kind of put it at an angle. You can really decide how far you want your sidewalk to come down. So that's completely up to you and how you want to do that. I'm just going to draw a line. I'll draw this a little bit darker so you can see this. Okay, so there's one line. Okay, so I have a diagonal line coming from vanishing point 1. Now I'm going to line my ruler up to vanishing point 2 and this point where I ended, and I'm going to draw another line. Alright, so now I have the start of my sidewalk. Now from here, I can finish up my sidewalk, so you have the option of coming down a little bit this time. So I'm going from vanishing point 1 again, and I'm going to be drawing another line coming down. It's going to look like this. Then I'm going to connect this point back to my vanishing point, number 2. So I'm lining up my ruler. Again, always make sure you're using a ruler. Alright, so now I've got the start of a sidewalk coming in here. So now let's say you want to add on a little curb like we have going on here. That's pretty easy to do. All you need is to go back to your first vanishing point, and you're just going to leave like a little space. So line your ruler up and go ahead and draw that line. So maybe then this is part of my curb. And then I'm going to repeat that same thing on the other side. So now I've got a little curb in there. If you wanted to, you could come across here and just add a little shading in. can always shade later as well. I'm going to go ahead and put a little line here. Just shade that in just so you can see what that would look like. Alright, so now I've got the start of my sidewalk going along. So now what we're going to do is we're going to add some buildings in here. And at this point, before we add our buildings, I'm just going to go ahead and erase the rest of my horizon line because I don't really need it anymore. And because I drew it very lightly, it doesn't take much to erase that. If you want to leave yours and erase it later, that's fine too. But what you're going to notice is our buildings, as we start to add them, are going to intersect this line. So you'll have to start erasing it eventually. Okay, so now I don't even need to worry about that. So to add a building, what we're going to do, let me show you this example. We're going to work with a major kind of main focal point building first that's pretty much aligned with our sidewalk here. So how you're going to do that is you're going to take your ruler and we're going to make a vertical line. And how high you want to come up is completely your choice. Just kind of eye it. Make sure you have a little space on the top at least. And then you're just going to put in a vertical line like this. Now what we're going to do is we're going to work from the top of the vertical line and we're going to come back to each of our vanishing points. So I'm going to go ahead and start with vanishing point 1. So I'm going to line my ruler up to vanishing point 1 and to the top of that vertical line I just made. Now this is an instance where you don't actually need to draw this all the way back to the vanishing point just to save yourself a little bit of time. So instead, just bring that line back a little ways as far as you want that building to go. So I'm going to stop mine about there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to line my ruler up so it's going straight up and down. It's a vertical line that's parallel to this line, and I'm going to draw that in till I hit that sidewalk. So now I've got one part of my building done there. Then I'm going to come over to this side and I'm going to repeat that same process on this side with vanishing point 2. Lining it up to my vanishing point, lining it up to the top of my building here. Again, instead of bringing that line all the way to the vanishing point, you could just stop it wherever you want that building to end. So I'm going to stop it about there. And then I'm going to repeat that process of bringing a line straight down through here. And that's going to finish off that building. And again, make sure it's vertical, line your ruler up, take your time in setting your ruler up, and then go ahead and draw that in. So now you should have one building. Okay? As you can see here, we've got the start of that one building. Now it's pretty easy to add doors and windows. You could put a sign in. Later you can go back in and add a little shading if you want to. But before we get to some windows and doors, let's go ahead and add a couple other buildings in there just so you can see how that looks. And again, I'm going to just show you this one more time. I'll show you how to add in if you want like kind of an alleyway so there's space between the buildings, and then also how you can add buildings that are a little bit taller so they look like it's really like a city. So to do that, let's go ahead and put a building behind this one just a little bit. So I'm going to line my ruler up about here. Notice I've got a little overlap, lining my ruler up, and I'm just going to draw a vertical line up here. But when I get to the building here, I'm going to stop. Okay, so you can see my line there. I just drew a little vertical line, but stopped when I ran into my other building. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring each of those sides back to each of my vanishing points, and I'm going to repeat that same process that I did for my first building. And then that's going to kind of create a layered look of buildings, which is what a city looks like. Okay, so I'm just going to bring it a little way back, not going all the way back to the vanishing point just to save on that erase time. And then I'm going to bring this straight down. So now I've got one side of my building here. And then I'm going to repeat that process with vanishing point 2, lining my ruler up, bring it back as far as you want it to go. And then notice I don't have a very long line to draw right here, but it's still going to be vertical, still straight up and down. I'm going to finish that off. Now it looks like I have two buildings. So let's say you want a building with a little bit of space in between, so maybe like a little alleyway. Let's go ahead and put a building over here on our right hand side. So again, I'm going to repeat that process of drawing a vertical line straight up and down. You can decide how tall you want that to be. Okay. Then I'm going to bring the top back to vanishing point 1. And just watch this carefully for a minute so you can see how far back I'm going to bring this. I don't actually want to overlap this building at all. So I'm going to come down about to here. Notice I have a space. Then I'm going to put in that vertical line and bring this straight down. And I'm going to repeat this process over here. And notice as you get closer to the vanishing point, you're going to have more of an angle on your building. So just keep that in mind as you're working. So I'm not going to bring that one down quite as far. And I'm going to fill in that vertical line. Okay, so you can see now I've got a building over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to erase this little piece right here. And then maybe to make it seem more like an alley, I'm going to line my ruler up and make a line that's going to go straight back. Alright, so now maybe it appears like it's going back down the alley. And let's go ahead and add in one more building right here, and then I'll show you how to do some doors and windows. So by now this will be our 4th building, so you should pretty much have the hang of it. Okay, this one I'm going to bring up a little bit more so it's taller than some of my other buildings. Go into my vanishing point 1, filling in those lines, and then coming to vanishing point 2. Again, I have a much steeper angle because I'm closer to the vanishing point, but that's okay. I'm going to fill that in and then bring that straight down. So now I've got several buildings going on here. I've got a little bit of an alleyway. You know, maybe you want to add just a little bit of shading in there, so it appears like it's going back in space a little bit. Okay, so now let's